Happens when a man embodies his masculinity and a woman embodies her femininity. I think what happens is magic and just pure love and just the highest form of love. The true liberation happens when you're in a relationship with someone and there's no back door open. Women are naturally in tune with the earth. We can hear her heartbeat. We can feel her cries. We can feel her love. So I love that you hold this connection and perspective of, if I provide for my woman, then she's restoring the connection that we as humanity have to the earth, which is long lost and forgotten and which is so essential. The world tries to distract us. Like you say, it's not just in romantic relating, but in everything. When we try a little bit of everything, we're not choosing anything fully. How likely are we going to be successful? It's very hard for them to believe that there are men out there who are like, no, I want to commit to one woman only. I want to devote, I want to provide for her, I want to protect for her. So women of the world, listen up, because the men are there. Like, I don't have to do anything in order to be worthy as a woman, as a child of God, as a human being on this planet.
You mentioned before, like, as women, we are attuned to the earth. Can you take me there? Like, what does that feel like? Welcome to the Spirit Unfolding podcast, where we explore the depth of the human experience, the creative energy that runs through us all, and what we can do to create a more beautiful world. My name is Lars, and every episode I sit down with a creative, pioneer or teacher in the fields of spirituality, art, health, and the natural world. We want to give you actionable insights to spiritual growth, taking ownership of your life and expanding your perspective on life's possibilities. Also, you can live a more authentic, loving, and fulfilling life. I am honored that you chose to spend your valuable time listening to the Spirit Unfolding podcast. And you would really help us by subscribing to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, and sharing the episode with your family and friends and on social media. Thank you so much. My guest today is Maaike Niestad. Maaike and I met at a spiritual festival where she was hosting a workshop, and I was so touched by her story that I just had to get her on the podcast. In this episode, Maaike shares her experience and insights into the concept of sacred union between man and woman. We talk about masculine and feminine dynamics and the power of devotion to both your partner and to love itself. We explore different types of conscious relationships, discuss the comeback of traditional values, and reflect on the most important moments that we each had in our relationships. I absolutely loved this conversation with Maaike, and I hope you will too. Let's dive in. Maaike, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. After we met a couple of months ago at a festival, and I was just touched by your story and how you look at the relationship between man and woman, and also with something greater as well, and what that has meant for you. And I think there's so much in there for people to, take away from and view life maybe through a bit of a different lens. So really excited we get to dive in today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I love that moment and that you were there and I saw your glowing face and your woman shining next to you. And yeah, like I told you on the phone this morning, I love talking about this topic. It's just my favorite thing in the world to speak of. So I'm really grateful to be here and have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks. You had that time, you had a presentation and a workshop about the road to union. Can we dive into that? Like, what does that mean? And maybe also before we go into that, like, let's set the frame a little bit about what masculine and feminine energy is and how that, what happens when a man really embodies the masculine energy and a woman embodies the feminine energy. Or, it can also be two men or two women, I guess, for a lot of people. Like, it's also about not necessarily biology, but mainly the energy, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm really curious what your take is on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think what you said, well, what happens when a man embodies his masculinity and a woman embodies her femininity? I think what happens is magic and just pure love and just the highest form of love gets to be expressed when a woman takes on her rightful posture as a woman and a man takes on his rightful posture as a man. I think we're each blueprinted with like baseline deep-rooted, yeah, it's like a blueprint with our qualities and our gifts and our natural essence. And I think our biology and our energies are very much related. And I think it's also potentially a difficult topic for many women or people in the world today that don't necessarily identify with their biological gender. But if I'm going to speak about these topics, when I say men, I usually mean masculine energy.
Yeah.
And when I say woman, or when I say feminine, I mean, sorry, I'm confusing it. My brain is already dysfunctioning. As I told you, I'm in my mood today.
Yeah, no worries.
So I can't go too deep in complex concepts.
But when you mention the masculine, you mean?
Yeah, like I might say men, whereas I mean masculine energy in a person.
Right.
And vice versa. When I say women or feminine, I mean the feminine aspects in someone. And something that I look at differently in terms of most people. So we're going to speak about feminine and masculine qualities in people. What I've unsubscribed of is the idea that men have an inner feminine and that women have an inner masculine. This is something that I resonated with, or not necessarily resonated with, that I studied a few years ago, and I came across my studies of like, so as a woman, I can identify with my inner masculine, and I would call upon that energy to get things done in the world and to be productive, right? Because these are more masculine energies and qualities, to be laser focused and to be sharp and directional and powerful and strong and leading and decisive and directful. It's a giving energy, it's a leading energy, whereas feminine energy is more receptive and receiving and surrendered and lean back. And it's very different energies. But when I learned that, I try to connect with an inner masculine side of me. But then I noticed it doesn't feel right within my being. Because when I do that, it's like I momentarily connect to a masculine identity in order to get things done. So basically I'm stepping, for me what it feels like, out of my natural blueprint and essence to step into that role and then come back into my feminine. And I would need a practice or something like that to connect back with my feminine essence. And since I've unsubscribed from that belief and just fully devoted myself to being a feminine woman, devoted to my feminine essence and blueprints, life just becomes so much more fluid and effortless. And there's no efforting, so it becomes effortless. So that's a different way for me of looking at things versus what we see nowadays a lot being taught.
Yeah, I love that. Like, just fully committed to embodying that side of yourself, or like maybe seeing it as that's the only side that's there, like the majority of the main energy. Yeah. Yes,
which doesn't mean that as a woman I don't have leading or decisive qualities. I do believe we can access all of these qualities within ourselves, just as men can receive, can feel qualities of receptivity and submission and surrender to a higher force, etc. It's just that the identity parts I don't connect with, and it feels like a much better way of living for me.
Yeah. So you already mentioned like it's helped you to surrender more and to be more in flow. Is there like practical things that you feel like you're really doing differently now
to be in the flow?
Yeah, and to live from a place of feminine energy fully.
Yeah, well, I receive life a lot more. I listen a lot more before I act. So I'm in surrender, submission, and devotion to the divine. I call it God. So that means, and I have given my life to God in a way of have your way, take the wheel, take control of my life, reshape everything according to your will, reshape me according to your will, rearrange my life according to your will. That has been my prayer for the last 2 years. A lot of that rearranging and refining has happened both in my outer reality as within. So right now I'm not so much projecting my will onto the world as I used to before, where I was like, oh, I want to create this thing. I have this desire. I have this dream. I have this vision. Let's go and create it. I'm much more receptive of like, well, God, what is your will for me? Show me, reveal to me what your will is for me, and show me where I'm out of alignment with my nature or with truth or with your word or with love in general. So it's much more listening, and from there taking the right action and continuously allowing myself to be reshaped and refined.
I love that. Like for me, let's say the last year has also been a practice of tuning into what love wants and what life wants.
Yeah.
And it's more and more I'm starting to realize and experience that this idea of I need to, create a vision and a whole roadmap for my life, and I need to like work really hard to get there. And then actually later finding out that I'm not getting exactly where I was planning to go, but I was going somewhere else because that's where life takes me.
Yeah.
And it's like this ability to tune into what life asks of you and what is perhaps in your blueprint, in your, let's say, your soul's mission or the higher plan that the divine has for you. It becomes less of a struggle. Yeah.
How do you find that? How do you connect with divine will?
For me, it's slowing down first. Like when I'm in my head a lot and I feel like, oh, I really have to sort of, I notice as soon as I go into my head and the thought process that tends to go really quickly. And then there's a more egoic part that comes up. And there's also this feeling of a lack, and there's maybe certain insecurities or fears coming up that are pushing me to act on behalf of them.
Right.
Instead of like slowing down. Breath is a great tool. Connect to my body, to my heart, and feel like what is life calling me to do here? What is the higher, say the higher purpose, or the thing that can come from this that is bigger than just me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get back to a little bit to the masculine feminine, because I think in our culture, a lot of like in the modern Western culture, there is a lot of this idea of, women have to work hard and like be boss babes and, all this kind of stuff. And let's say like, let's make sure like I'm definitely for equal rights and, whether you're a man or a woman, if you do the same kind of job, you should get the same amount of money paid and all this, of course. But is it actually in the woman's blueprint to do the same thing as a man? Because men and women are fundamentally different with their unique qualities that are actually there to help each other and to, they can work in perfect harmony if you let them be that what they are naturally.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
So-
it's a great question.
Yeah. How have you come to that realization? Because you said like before I was studying a different thing, and then like what has happened in your life where you felt like, okay, that is now, I really experience it as a different thing. What happened?
Yeah, a lot happened to start there. What happened is I started to be really attuned to God, to myself, to my womb, whereas before I was only and always attuned to my heart. I kind of neglected the idea that I have a womb as a woman, and I started to connect more with my body and lean in to the subtle cues that my body was always communicating with me every moment, every second of the day. And very often I could feel that I was actually going against my biology by noticing that I would be stressed or rushed. Like I have a pattern of being late. So with that pattern comes being rushed and stressed, and it's just not my rightful posturing. But I would do that because, like you said before, my mind tells me things, right, based on egoic thoughts and patterns and conditioning. And I would just notice that after a while, you can quite easily deplete yourself. And then at the end of the day, you're feeling depleted. You've given your energy away. You've been out of your rightful nature, operating. And it's just like, okay, so if I track everything back, there's a beautiful expression, walking the cat back home. Have you heard of this expression?
No.
Basically, it's when you notice you're out of alignment. Let's say it's 3 o'clock afternoon. You're like, fuck, I'm really out of alignment. What happened here? And then it's like you always, if you track it back, if you walk the cat back home, you can always track where the cat left the door, and where like the first original thought came in that led you out of alignment, but you weren't aware of that thought. Right? Let's say an email came in or a message came in and it triggered a feeling of, I don't know, inferiority or insecurity about a decision that you have to make, that you're procrastinating on. And your mind judges yourself like, oh, I'm procrastinating again. I should do this thing. I'm actually worthless. And then this train and this conditioning of I'm worthless and I'm a procrastinator and I'm a flawed human being starts, and you don't notice it, and at 3 o'clock you're cranky and you're trying to overcompensate for these wounds that have been activated. So going back to where did you lose your connection, and I can really feel that in my body. So even when I told you this morning, okay, I'm in a very slow mode today as I'm at the first day of my bleed, so I'm naturally lean back. I cannot push my body to rush because he's communicating with me so clearly. I'd rather uncomfortably be 50 minutes late than stress myself out to be there 5 minutes earlier. So I think a woman's bleed, by the way, is a perfect time to connect deeper with these feminine aspects, especially if we're not on birth control, because that really helps if we don't have the external hormones as women.
And the numbing that this creates, like it's really chemicals that are disturbing the hormonal balance in your body.
Yeah,
right?
totally. And I've been on birth control for the first years of my teenage times. And I always thought like this feminine thing about emotions and mood swings, like what's up with that? Just don't be, I mean, in Dutch, I would say an aansteller. How would you say that?
So don't, well, it may be like complain too much about it.
Yeah, something like that. Like I would judge myself and other women. I'd be like, what are you complaining about? Just go. Until I got off birth control, and it took me like 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks to regulate back my hormonal balance. And I was like, oh, this is what it means to be a woman. This is what it means to have this ebb and flow and to, oh my God. So feelings opened up. And I was like, all right, so how am I going to adjust to that? Instead of just push myself to deliver constantly, because I think all of us, both men and women, are pressured to deliver results and products and productivity in the world.
Yes, but it's also about like how much do you let yourself be pressured?
Oh yes,
because that external world is always there, and there's like a lot that wants to take the inner peace away from you, and it is like all these ideas and this energy in the society as a whole of like, you know, like you said, like you need to, like the rat race, you always need to work, you need to be productive, you need to have all these material things because otherwise you're deemed unsuccessful.
Yeah.
But a lot of us, because of that, are actually unhappy, or at least very much out of tune with our bodies. And how do you come back to the inner peace in a world that's trying to destroy it?
Well, first, I think it's a lot of inner work, because all these external pulls and triggers, they can only connect with parts of ourselves, right? They can only hook if there's something to hook into. So it only hooks if we have parts that still believe that we are unworthy and that we have to earn our worthy place in the world, our worthiness, our rightfulness, righteousness. The idea that we have to earn love, basically. So it's the origin of for me, transforming that is transforming those parts in me that believe they have to earn love, that believe they have to earn their place in the world. And for me, that looked like giving these parts to Christ and to God, and to let them be healed at the root, at the core. And by that, unsubscribing from those beliefs that I have to earn my way into the world, but that I'm already whole and worthy and loved. And for me, bringing those parts home into Christ has given such a deep foundation of peace. Like I don't have to do anything in order to be worthy as a woman, as a child of God, as a human being on this planet. And from there, from that foundation of peace, when I lose that, I will need to reconnect with either Christ or faith or my womb or just my body, and just breathe, be present, and it will calm back down. Whereas before, I had to do more inner work to get back to that state. And now it feels so much easier because it's like I'm hooked into Jesus now. So I just need to remember the word and the love of Christ. And it's like, oh yeah. And then inspiration can flow. I think I'm actually more productive in the world, but I shoot less arrows, but they're more precise. And so that feels, peaceful, determined, calm.
Yeah. And I love what you said about like there needs to be a hook for something to be able to hook onto, hold on to. Because like I think what I've experienced in the past, let's say 4 years roughly of doing more inner work and spiritual work is like first you're unaware of certain, let's say, all these wounds and beliefs and insecurities that you hold, that have for a long time, in my case, were the thing that were at least influencing how I would act in the world, how I would behave, how I would, live my life. And like you said, like I think at the core, what I at some point recognized is at the core of all this is this idea that, or this belief that I need to do something to be worthy. So I'm not really a human being, but I'm a human doing all the time. And at some point to realize that it's actually more powerful and totally okay to surrender and just be. And that in itself is enough to receive love.
Yes.
From higher source, but also from yourself. Like that I've also felt like in those moments is actually a lot easier to connect to the source of love that's within you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And okay, so we're still in this process of like, okay, you have masculine and feminine energy. How do those two combine to lift each other up to create a relationship that's more than the sum of its parts? And then also how does this whole idea of union come into that?
Yeah, I love the question. So I believe that if a woman embodies her natural and rightful posture as a woman, and a man does that the ultimate love can flow because each fulfill their role for themselves, for God, and for the other. So I believe men have like a innate biology that ignites them basically to drive, to lead, to create, to give, to penetrate into the world, but also to fight, to be sharp, to deliver strength, protection, provision, all of these things. Whereas what women will bring to a man, like I believe that as we women, we're so sensual, right? We feel our way through life, and men tend to think their way through life a bit more. So, which is beautiful. We need both qualities, right? But if a woman tries to think her way through life, which I've done for years, so I know very well what that's like, we lose the connection to our sensuality, our bodies, our senses, and we become more like men. And I've been this for many, many years, this strong, independent woman, right? I can do it on my own, make sure I don't need no man because I don't want to be in a position of dependence. And I've learned from my mother, I need to be independent and I need finances for that. I need a purpose for that. I need da. But then we tend to slip into this false idea as women that we don't need men, which is very, very false because we actually do. But when we are in this independent women archetype or in the boss babe archetype, we can create this shield around us that's very difficult for men to penetrate. And then a very masculine oriented man will either look at that and go like, yeah, right, I'm not going to play that game. I will choose like a more soft and receptive woman where I can actually be in service to improve her life, because I believe men are naturally designed to do that, to be of service to women. Or a man will try to fight it, right? And try to fight who is the strongest here.
Break through the armor.
Break through the armor, right? And some succeed, but that is not always coming from a healthy place, because it's possible that when a man does that when he succeeds, that he kind of loses interest because he's hunted down the prey. And if a man is interested in that process for his own sense of self-worth, then he has the prey, and then it's like, oh, now there's a soft, receptive woman. Okay, on to the next, right? So it's possible. Or a woman who is in that posturing will attract a man who actually likes that she is leading and that she is providing and that she brings the magic and the structure and all of that. And that's usually energetically a more receptive and a more passive man.
It's kind of flipping the energies.
You're flipping the poles.
Yes.
Yes. And I think it long-term doesn't work. Not if we want union. And what union for me means is that it's to unite. It's to unite two opposites, to unite masculine and feminine. And for me, I mean, we all exist of, I don't know how many different parts. Like, how many parts have you found within yourself alone? Like, many, right?
Yeah, it's too many to
count. And same for me. And so when we bring just these two people together with all of their parts, for me, union, no part gets left behind. That means that all parts are being equally loved and welcomed and accepted and brought into the love and the transformational powers of union. So we have to bring all of ourselves into this union, which creates like a very strong bond. But it doesn't really work when we try to hide parts of ourselves, which we also tend to do because we think we need to present certain parts of ourselves in order to be loved, right?
Yeah, and hide other parts.
And hide other parts, yeah.
Maybe also parts that we don't accept from ourselves, that we have them in the first place.
Yeah.
Things that certain insecurities or certain desires or things that have happened in the past or things that a version that not the person that we've been in the past.
Yeah.
Even though they've all been the things that were needed to lead us to who we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really also a very, very vulnerable place for both the man and the woman to be in that place and to devote to the union and bring everything. It also makes you very vulnerable. How has your experience been with that part?
Very vulnerable. It just shines light on everything that hasn't fully been loved and been placed into the light. And so it's very exposing. And to me, it feels like ego death over and over and over again. It's like also my partner continuously invites me to share every little dark edge, like everything that's alive, like holding nothing back. And he also invites me to share feedback, like what I observe in our union, what I observe in him, how I respond to certain things. And it invites me to deliver feedback that my ego doesn't want to do, because I've learned in previous relationships that creates conflict, and that a man will then either retreat and like go into his cave and hide from the connection, or he will fight. So I've learned in previous relationships it's not safe to bring everything that I feel and see. So every time I kind of have to bring this part, like, okay, I know it's safe here this time, but it's still very scary for me to do because I don't want the conflict. But here it is. Here's a difficult thing that I don't want to say. So it feels like ego death every time. And also it feels like, because in the beginning, I noticed when he courted me, I was actually quite hesitant to surrender myself. And I was like, oh, but I'm not ready for this. I thought I was ready for that. I said I was ready for that. I prayed to God for my union. And then when it arrived, I was like, oh God, no, I'm not ready for this. No, this is way too much love, way too much commitment. Like, I can't deal with that.
And was that your head or your body communicating?
It was actually my body that still had parts that were still stuck in like freeze and then run. So it was very interesting to know. So the body is trustworthy up to a certain point because it can also hold patterns, right? And trauma still. So my pattern, but I was very aware of it, was like, oh, in the face of this healthy love and this man that chooses so fully and wants to commit so fully, I want to run. What is that? And so I was really with that, and I shared with him also all the parts and all the fears and all the ways I thought we couldn't be together or whatever. And he just loved and held everything. And was like, I want to know more. What's there? And it wasn't my belly world that was all like, I feel all this fear and all this. What if it gets this? What if it gets that? What if it gets boring? That was like my biggest fear. What if it gets boring? I cannot do boring for the rest of my life. I will die. And yeah, then really unplugging all of the ways. But what does boring mean? What are you really afraid of? I'm afraid of this, that. And why are you afraid of that in connection to me? Well, because of this, that. And then everything gets loved, everything gets seen, and then it resolves. Energy just needs to be felt and really witnessed, like you say, brought into the light, and then it dissolves.
Yeah.
And then it's like, after a while, it's like, okay, I have no more arguments against love. I'm complete.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And it's so powerful that he really went all in to, like you said, court you and see you and dedicate his presence to be with all the parts of you, and to take the leadership there, to invite you to do the same.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
And how has he shared, like, what's that like for him as a man to, because I suppose, like, if I look at myself, like, I'm also, obviously we're all still learning. I'm still learning here as well in this part, but I've also realized, like, in the younger version of me, the Lars of 5 or 10 years ago, looked at life and at women and at relationships in a different way, because I just didn't have I didn't learn about this yet. And it was way more this, there was more of this insecurities beneath the surface, and this idea of, well, what can I get instead of what can I bring?
Yeah.
And what not be in the head but to be in the body. And it's really taken trial and error, and also like fierce commitment to just be there and decide to be in a moment with my own insecurities, my own fears, my own pain, but also with hers in my relationship, to really say to myself, no, I'm no longer running away when I get afraid, but I'm just expressing that.
Yeah.
And in that, dissolving it, and also inviting her to do the same.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
It's not easy. How does it feel to you? Does it feel like ego death as well, or would you describe it differently?
I'm not sure if it's full ego death, but it's definitely, there can be this reluctance of, oh, now it gets too scary. It gets like really vulnerable, and then there's like this part of like, oh, I'm not sure I can, like there's this voice coming up, or this feeling of like that. In the past, I've shared this part before in a relationship, and it didn't turn out well. So tell me, please, what's the reason for me to do this now? And it will go, right? And it's just about trusting my partner and our relationship, and also just life as a whole, and my own capacity, or my own ability to hold a greater capacity of this without resolving into, actually acting on the fear. Yeah. Just being with it. Yeah. But it's definitely, it gives me all these sensations, like, the breath going higher in the body, and like your heart racing, or even shutting down. But then for me, it's about recognizing that in the moment, and then still deciding to do it anyway. Like yesterday, 2 days ago, I had a men's circle, and there was a very vulnerable thing that I decided I really felt like I needed to share. And it was 4 or 5 times that I felt like, oh, now I need to share this part. And can I share that part? Oh yeah, okay, I will share that part too. And then 2 minutes later was another fear, or another even more vulnerable piece coming up. And it's like, I can share this part too. So it's really, for me, also about tuning in and knowing that I can hold it, and that I'm stronger than my fears. Yeah. But but especially in relationships, right? It's the more intimate you get, the more is revealed. Yes.
And this is also why I think that this concept, this covenant of union, is the ultimate invitation for deep personal growth and liberation and spiritual liberation as well. And this is why I don't believe, and I've explored this in the past, but I don't believe in polyamorous relationships for this purpose.
I love about this because we met at a spiritual festival where I wasn't aware of this before I went, but like there was quite a lot of workshops and like, you know, just the people in general like that were interested in this polyamory. And then you came in and did this workshop on the road to union, and it actually triggered quite a couple of people in your audience, which you warned them about, but it still happened.
Yeah, so this is going to be triggering. Buckle up.
How is that for you? Like, how do you look at that? Like this idea of polyamory and that love needs to be free is what I've often heard. Like, I don't resonate with it either, but I'm really curious. Like, I do believe that there is this, you know, I don't necessarily believe it's like coming out of a fear or something. I'm curious also to dive into this with someone that is, you know, looking at life through that lens. But I'm curious to see, like, how do you look at that? How do you look at the concept of polyamory and, you know, of the role of love in life, comparing that to the idea of union as well?
Yeah. Well, I believe that the path of polyamory can be very supportive and to someone's growth for a while, but I don't believe it's the end station in love. And I believe it can lead to a great deal of teachings and abilities to love more and to hold more challenges, to hold more triggers, to hold more energy, to really be shown more mirrors to yourself, right? Because relationships also serve as mirrors to yourself. So I can see how it functions to liberate parts of yourself that are stuck, caged still, through interacting with multiple partners. But it doesn't allow you to go as deep as you can in a union, because there's so many ways to escape, because you literally have doors open. And the true liberation happens when you're in a relationship with someone and there's no back door open. You're literally there together and you're going to figure it out no matter what. You're going to shine light on the patterns no matter what. There's no escapism. There's no room for it. And I also believe that in a true union, I do believe it's God's will for men and women to be together. 2, not 3 or 4 or 5. Like, nowhere that is being presented, nowhere that is coming from godliness that we should be in open relationships with multiple people. No scripture, no ancient text, for as far as I know, it promotes that idea, right? I believe it's more, well, let's not go into that, but I believe that's more coming from other forces, right? These ideas, although I can still see the benefit of it at the same time. But I believe that when we love and relate according to God's will and our original blueprint, that God is there as well. So your union is not just 2, it's actually 3. God is there. And if you commit to each other and you make this decision, and especially if you make this decision and you make your vows before God, then he or she is there to support whatever you are going through. And I think scripture says that when 2 come together in my name with like one shared vision or intention, I know exactly what the word is in scripture, it shall be done. So that means if you and your partner come together with like, okay, we have this problem in our midst, but we believe that our love is greater than the problem, and we decide that whatever happens, we will solve this problem together. That's our decision, and we make the decision before God. I believe that God steps in and supports that, and supports the revelation or the healing or removing of obstacles that is needed. So yeah, I think union is just the pathway to so much more liberation of yourself. It opens up more in your purpose, I believe, in your abundance, in your health. It's said that married men live 6 years longer than unmarried men. So yeah, it's just, it makes biologically a lot more sense to me.
It's also, I've heard people share like, well, it's like a pressure cooker for growth to be in a polyamorous relationship, because there's more triggers, and in that sense, it's a positive thing. But I think that lens can also be applied to just a devotional relationship between man and woman, because you might actually, there's maybe one or multiple people less that are mirroring you, or that are in your field, but at the same time you're going deeper with one person.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you shared in your workshop, on the festival, like about this is devotional, this is about like 100% committing. It really touched me, and I also feel like this is something that is really missing from society so much right now. And not just in like romantic relationships, but also like people are job hopping all the time, and we're all like, our attention is so fractured by all our phones and everything that's happening. So like, it's also something that what I've realized or like experienced, like once you go into this type of like, once you decide that you are devoted to your partner and to your relationship, and you are just, I wouldn't say ignorant, but it's like, it doesn't really matter, whatever is happening in terms of, people that maybe desire you or whatever, it doesn't matter, because you've decided, I'm only desiring this person in this relationship.
Yeah.
And if you're in that energy of commitment, it also ripples out to other parts of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it frees up so much energy also, because I don't know what you've observed, but I've observed that people who are very deep in polyamorous relationships, you spend a lot of time and energy, a lot of your energetic resource goes there. And so a lot less goes to other things, goes to actually building like rooted foundations in your life, to your purpose, for example, or to wealth building, or whatever like thing you are here to birth into the world. You just have usually less energy available for that, because, and I've been exploring polyamorous relationships before, right? And there's a tendency for drama. It doesn't necessarily have to be there. I've also experienced moments where that wasn't there, and it was just love, and like it was very beautiful. But there's a tendency for drama, and it just takes away. But I think in general, also what you're referring to, the world tries to distract us. And I believe God's opposing forces seek to distract us. And when we are distracted, when we don't focus, we get lost. We get lost in the mix of everything. And like you say, it's not just in romantic relating, but in everything. When we try a little bit of everything, we're not choosing anything fully. If we try to create 10 different projects at the same time, how likely are we going to be successful in these 10 different projects? And I'm speaking to myself here, because this is definitely, and that's been my past. Me of like, no, I want to do and this and that. And then nothing fully comes off the ground the way you've envisioned it, because you're just afraid to choose. You're just afraid of commitment. But when we commit to something so fully, it's when we actually see results. And I also see that in our spiritual practice. I used to also be that person that was like a bit of breath work and a bit of this and a bit of da. Like the spiritual, especially the new age, has so much to offer. And you see people hop from breathwork ceremony to ice bath to psilocybin journey to ayahuasca to this retreat to that retreat to tantric here to this there. And they have to breathe, and they have to do Wim Hof, and they have to do this, and then they have to do shadow work, and they have to do mindset work. It's like, God, so much work.
And also no time to actually integrate anything you've experienced.
Exactly. When are you going to breathe out? And what if you just look at that whole buffet of like spiritual practices that are on the table? Just as you could look at a whole buffet of all the foods, it's just not going to digest well if you try to mix fruits with cheese and meat and salad and grains and beans.
Ice cream.
It's horrible in the belly. And the same is with our spiritual practice. So for me, cleaning up and being like, oh, I actually don't need to do any of that. My practice is aligning myself to God, and I connect. One of the ways I connect through God is through my womb. And that's it, basically. And I will connect to nature, my womb, God, I orient there, and that's it. And if I feel inspired to do a breath work, but actually don't, if I feel inspired to meditate, actually don't. You need so much less, and the effect is so much deeper peace and stillness. So yeah, less distraction and more simplicity.
Yeah.
paves the way.
Words to live by. I love that you shortly mentioned your womb, and we were on the phone earlier today, and I also shared about the retreat that I went to in the past weekend, and one of the teachers, facilitators, I know she does a lot of womb work with women, and I think this is something interesting, because in the past I've never really thought about this, but like over the last couple of years, really realized like a woman and a woman's body is in a sense an oracle. It's an instrument of truth, and it's also connection to the unseen world, to the spirit world. Because we can say, oh, there's this. Okay, we have a sperm cell and we have an egg cell, and like they combine and they multiply and it grows a human, but like that doesn't explain yet where the soul comes from. And like the woman's womb is this portal to another dimension, another world. And I don't think a lot of people, or maybe no one, actually knows, or how that actually works. But it's your body isn't like the woman's body is a unique instrument to tune into these subtle energies and let's say life force or God. How is that, like you also shared, like I wasn't aware of this, or I wasn't like actively engaging with this in the past. Like, how is that now helping you and guiding you, that connection?
I love your words. Those were beautiful words. Words to live by. And like, wow, what a beautiful way you look at the feminine and you recognize and you see that. For me, the womb and our cervix, so there's of course more organs, right, that we have there, is a way that we can hear the voice of God. Because indeed our womb is the portal to the void, to the beyond. And I believe that when a woman, it's so beautiful, because one of my mentors, she's about to give birth like any moment now, and I can feel her soul like just moved out of this realm. And I can feel, and what a woman does, consciously or not, I believe her soul goes to pick up the soul of her child from another realm and then brings it back forth and then receives that child through her womb. And it's a deeply initiatory process for both mother and child to go through, but it's so otherworldly and so magical. I think we've taken that out in most of Western society and medicine also. But yeah, it's we have a portal to the divine and to the beyond, and the womb, for as far as I found, it speaks truth, but it can also hold trauma, right? So for a lot of women, there's a lot of sexual shame or oppression, or there can be so much trauma more than just that in the womb, and therefore when some women connect there, they just feel a lot of rage and pain. And I believe symptoms as PCOS or endometriosis, like all of these feminine organ symptoms, are usually a representation of unhealed patterns related to our femininity in essence. And I've also worked, because I've done a lot of healing work and healing sessions for a few years, with women who came to me with ovarian cysts or PCOS, and doctors would tell them there's no way to heal this. Although after one session, it was gone and doctors couldn't find anything. And in that one session, that woman reconnected with her womb and with her femininity. And then we found like a real block to her connected to her body, because in this case, this woman was sexually abused. And so she had found, okay, my beauty and my sensuality is unsafe. So I have to hide that and I have to disconnect from that in order to be safe from sexual assault. So when we moved through that and she healed that and revealed that, brought that into the light, reconnected with her femininity and saw it as a gift to offer, the PCOS is gone. So magical. I'm not quite sure if that answered your question.
So beautiful. No, but I love that, because it also confirms like my experience of that the physical is the reflection of the energetic and the emotional and the spiritual.
Yeah.
And I think like Western medicine, it's all focused on, like, it doesn't even recognize for the most part like the existence of a soul, or like the influence of like how vast the influence is of emotions and of like spiritual wounds and all these kinds of things to our physical body. And I love that to hear, you know, this experience that you've felt so up close. Yeah. And you shared a little bit about healing work you've done, and like I'm curious to dive into a bit more of that. Like what is it actually? Because we talked a lot about union and polarity, and what is it that you actually, you know, do when you help people with on a week to week, day to day basis?
Yeah, I've changed my work a little bit. So in the past years, I've been very focused on healing and helping people reconnect to who they truly are, their natural essence. And if you do that, you come across so much blocks and conditionings and unhealed trauma. So I would guide people to self-heal, and I would also help them to heal these parts and to really connect with this godly peace inside of us, and also to remember and live their purpose. And the last years, so I help mostly women, but also some men to live their purpose, so that we can even go into a little bit of business coaching there as well for someone who has like a purpose and mission on their heart. But more, it's now related to feminine embodiment, women who want to come into union with their masculine counterpart, whether they're already married or whether they're single and hoping to meet their partner, or they're in a marriage and, you know, they know their marriage is not reflecting union and there's a lot of conflict or there's disconnection, and they want to bring that back by changing themselves and coming back into their rightful posturing as a woman. And also union with God, because I believe union with God and with yourself is a prerequisite for being in true union with another human being. Fully, and not saying that you need to fully love all parts before you can be loved, but I believe for this true union, that's a reflection of a deeper union you have with yourself and God. So yeah, and I also have a healing community where I still guide people in a community, so it's not just me doing that, to self-heal with natural medicines from the earth, mostly with the use of essential oils, but also from a holistic perspective. What is this complaint communicating, right? If you have this allergy or this skin rash or this womb thing going on or this joint issue, how can you support that healing with natural medicine that's very accessible? I just told you before, how could you maybe replace antibiotics for natural causes? Yeah, and also look at it from a holistic perspective.
Beautiful. So I also hear in there like the awareness of what is this telling me. So like if we experience certain symptoms, I really like recently have this is something that really landed deep in me. Is like nature doesn't make mistakes.
I agree.
And you call that God or whatever you will, but it's like this idea of your body is telling you something, and there's a reason something is happening, and if you can figure out the reason, it will dissolve instead of focusing on the symptoms. Whether they are physical or emotional doesn't really matter. The same applies.
Yeah.
To go back and have the courage also to look at your own life and your own wounds and your own patterns and how you live your life. See, like, where was my part in this?
Yeah.
How is how do you look at this whole idea of healing? Because you already said like I'm helping people, but is it them themselves that they're doing it? Is it also, or is it also part of it is surrendering to something bigger? How does that work?
I think you're always your own healer. So I never said I am the healer, even if though, you know, sometimes in the Instagram bio I would have put holistic healer. But then when I would speak to somebody, I'm like, I'm not the healer. You are the healer, but I will guide you into a place and a state so that you have the information and the awareness and the tools that you need to heal, because the body heals on its own. It just needs the right conditions in place. These bodies are incredible self-healing mechanisms. Everything that's alive wants to live. Everything that's diseased wants to get healthy, right? Apart from parts that purposefully want to create disease, which also exist in the world, right? A cancer cell, for example, just wants to rapidly grow, like a cancer cell necessarily itself, but it wants to be healthy itself, right? It wants to take over.
I love, because I love this. Maybe you're familiar with Zach Bush, Dr. Zach Bush, and he really looks at this of like, look, a cancer cell is just a cell that's no longer attached to the other cells, like energetically, so it feels it's alone, and the only way to survive is to replicate. And in a sense, the same is happening, I think, with emotional parts of us, where like when we're not recognizing them, they are completely alone, and the only thing they can do is get bigger and bigger until we recognize them, see them, love them, and then they dissolve.
So that implies that cancer in itself is a separation conflict.
Yes.
Which I like that idea. I think it could be true.
I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I really like.
Yeah.
I think it's a fascinating concept, and the more and more I feel like, the more we as humans, let's say, screw with nature. It's not necessarily good things that will come out of that.
No. We just need to support the body, like understand the natural healing mechanisms and understand, like, okay, so what do we need to give the body? Like, what surroundings, what conditions does the body need to heal? Just as if a fish would be sick, you're not going to look at the fish, but you're going to look at the water in the bowl, and you're going to refresh the water. You're going to see if there's enough plants in the water that provide oxygen. If a seed is not growing, you're going to look at the healthiness and the nutrients in the soil. Does it get enough water? What about the wind? You're looking at external conditions, but you don't blame the seed. Although when we look at our body, Western medicine tends to not look at it the same way. Yeah. But this is nature. We are nature. We're not any different. So we also have optimal conditions that we need to heal. And those conditions can be frequency and time and space and nourishment and certain vitamins and minerals and love and acceptance and bringing parts of ourselves into unity and seeing things and loving them back into wholeness. Yeah, there's an array of conditions that we already know that work: sunlight, air, water, being properly hydrated, all of these things that are good for any human being. But what is it that you specifically need for the symptom that your body created to call for your awareness to something? I believe the body also creates dis-ease because it wants to come into greater balance and unity. And so it's communicating something not to be against you, but for you. It's like, hey, I have this thing over here. There's something I need you to look at. It's going to be good for you if you understand. Like, and of course, you can also say, a friend of mine posted this post the other day. It's like, okay, I love that the body is communicating, but can't it just speak to me in like English and tell me what it wants? Why does it have to be so difficult?
Yeah, right.
I get that perspective as well, but it's always communicating something, and it's here for us.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's also part of it, like, okay, we're used to like the, English language in this case of like, but there is a more subtle language that's being spoken.
Yeah.
And it's also our job to tune into that. And the same, I think, applies for relationships. And can you share more about, like, you talked a bit about before, like you're working on a masterclass for couples. You're also helping couples or people that are still single to, go into this concept of union and a devotional relationship. What is it that you do with them exactly?
Yeah. People who are single, I will prepare them to be ready for union, because I believe your external reality is a reflection of your internal reality. So if you want to, and usually, so what I see with a lot of women that I guide, they have a pattern of attracting unavailable men. They want this conscious, beautiful, masculine men, and they attract men who look like that, who act like that, who behave like that, but they're not available. They're still caught up in some other relationship or whatever. So we look at, like, what is it in you that is attracting that? So where are you, for example, still unavailable? Unavailable to yourself, unavailable to love, unavailable to those parts in you who desperately seek love. And so this is just one example, but we look at preparing you to be in union, and for both singles and women and couples, but also for men, but that will be more my partner guiding the men. We're just looking at, okay, so what's alive in your relationship? So let's say for a few women I guide right now, it's conflict and it's disconnection. And then we go into, how do you show up? How do you connect? How do you communicate? What's the reflection that you're getting back? What is it that he's telling you? What is his behavior looking like? Okay, so if we take that mirror and we look back at you, then we can easily see, okay, so here's where you're not being in your feminine pole. So he's either doing this thing of disconnecting or fighting or going into his feminine pole, which is 3 things that you don't want. So if she, as the woman, changes her posture, which is challenging because then she has to be vulnerable and she has to confront her own feelings, and she doesn't necessarily feel safe with this man, but she has to willingly put down her armor and connect to him from that unarmored space and unarmored heart, and basically stand before him emotionally naked and be like, hey, what are you doing right now? You're hurting me here. And sometimes this is what a man will need to actually see, like that's the mirror that he needs. But when she meets him with her armor and her wit and her sharp mind and her words, he thinks energetically there's an opponent in the field, and men are wired to win any battle, right? So he tries to win the battle with his partner, and of course there's going to be disconnection. So this is just an example of what we could work on.
Beautiful. Yeah, everything around us is a mirror.
Yeah.
To learn more about ourselves, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for some women, they are in relationships with men who are treating them really badly. But also that is a reflection, and sometimes it means you have to walk away. And it's like, if you have done all the feminine embodiment practices and this man is still meeting you from an unhealthy place continuously, then why are you still there? And why did you choose this man in the first place? And if I have these conversations with women, it's almost always like, I've seen the red flags from the beginning, but I wasn't really aware, or I didn't really want to see. But a person always shows you who they is from the early stages of meeting them. And sometimes they say exactly how you meet someone. Literally the actual meeting is how the relationship will unfold. I don't know about you, but I have seen that in a few relationships that was actually true. So I don't know if there's much truth to that expression, but I have seen some examples of it. But yeah, it's like, where do you allow that? Why are you available to unhealthy love? And then there's a reclaiming of parts that haven't been loved by the woman herself. And then that shifts. Either the man will completely change his behavior, or she will finally recognize what she's worthy of and she'll walk away. And she will attract a very different man who is willing to love her right.
Beautiful. What has been a big challenge for you? I see where you want to take this, either in this part or something that's sort of adjacent to it. Like, yeah, what has been a big challenge for you, and how did you come out of that? What did you learn from it?
In related to union or life?
Yeah, I would say when we're talking about relationships and
yeah,
confronting parts of you that were maybe hard to look at first.
It was laying down the strongest part of me and laying down the part of me that thinks she knows better. Because women are very intuitive and very aware, so we can see and observe a lot. And especially, I see this in a lot of conscious women nowadays. And they have their businesses together, they're conscious, they're aware, they live beautiful conscious lifestyles, they're of purpose and of service. And especially when they do healing work, so they're used to working with people's psyche, it's very easy for them to look at a person and to read and to get like a diagnose basically of the person and to basically, okay, so here's what you're doing and this is your patterns and this is where you're stuck. And so this is a big shadow for women like myself.
To do that in relationships.
Yeah. And to bring that and to bring your analysis and your diagnosis and to fall into or step into the fall of wanting to coach your partner, or and thereby you just, when you coach somebody, you automatically do this. And it can be, and I speak to so many women, but like, I know what I see is true. I know he is doing this because of this thing to his mother, or I know he has to. Even someone told me recently, like, basically it's also a pattern of taking too much responsibility. So I spoke to someone and she was like, yeah, and I really see his patterns. And then I did a constellation, and I did a constellation for his family line, his male line. And I was like, excuse me, why did you exactly do that? Yeah, well, because I just wanted to see the patterns, and I wanted to understand why he is the way he is. I wanted to understand him better. I'm like, it's not your place to look into his family line, into his constellation, into his male lineage. It's not your place, it's his place. But when you step into his place, you're automatically like mothering or one-upping your man, and you're not in rightful relationship. So it's really stepping back from anywhere that you want to do that, and when you think you know better, and really stepping back, seeing the man and meeting the man in front of you from an equal position, and letting him fight his own battles, letting him take his own responsibility. I think it's way more respectful to do that, but it's challenging when you see things and intuit things very clearly. So that was a big part of my ego I had to lay down as well, taking over responsibility. I know what's wrong. I know the pattern. I know where we go off. It's exactly this, that. So you need to look at this. I need to look at this. So it's leading, it's directing, it's trying to solve someone's problems, and then forcing them to take a route that you've already decided for them. There's no freedom in that.
Exactly, because you're taking the power away from them as well, to do it at their own tempo, in their own way.
Yeah.
And like it's such a beautiful reflection, because I've also struggled with this. Is like, and it comes from a good place. I think, of course, there's a mixture of reasons why this happens, but like, there's definitely also this part of, I just genuinely want to help. But
are you?
Exactly, because if you fail to recognize that actually, if you're doing it for someone, you're taking away the opportunity for them to do them themselves and grow from it.
Yeah.
You're actually not helping at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a painful realization.
Yeah.
But it's also a very liberating one, if you can surrender to it.
Just as a great coach allows their coachees to come to their own insights, and that means you have to be patient enough and ask the right questions so that someone can come to the realizations themselves. It hits much deeper than when someone just gives you the answer. Well, it's this.
I'm not even sure it's possible to do it in that, if you give someone the answer that actually works.
Yeah, good question. Does it ever work? I don't know.
Definitely on a less deeper level. I mean, maybe you can sometimes, like, let's say, wake people up in that sense, but like in general, it's just.
And I think it can work, but it has a shadow side. Also in coaching and in mentorship, I've learned that as well, that because when I look back at my coaching and mentorship, there are some people who actually adjust to that quite well, and they want you to give the answers, and they would just follow and implement, and then they come back with their next question. But it has a shadow of creating codependency with your mentor and not checking if what your mentor is offering is actually truthful and rightful for you. And you really want to make sure that you walk your own path and not something that another has walked and is offering to you. Although if someone is, like for example, if I choose a mentor, I choose someone who's walked a path that I am yet to embark on, or am just starting to walk, and I want to learn from the insights and the lessons and revelations they've had along the way. But it doesn't mean that I'm walking to exactly the same destination as them. And we always have to find our own path in that. So I think a good coach and mentor will also recognize when their client is being codependent with them, and bring them back to a place of self-ownership.
Beautiful, love that. It's such a, I think, we're all on different layers and levels unaware of how codependent or dependent we actually are of the things around us. whether it's our relationship, whether it's a certain friend, our parents, the government, whatever it is, like, to really come to that realization of I'm actually the maker of my life, and I'm the only one that's responsible. It's at first it can be an overwhelming thing to feel, because all of a sudden these things that first were like, oh, someone will actually help me or take care of that. Now all of a sudden it's all me. But if you start to work with that, it actually is so empowering, because you experience, like, or at least what I've experienced is just the confidence grows so much, and also the groundedness, because you can be in your own body and with yourself a lot better. Yeah.
And for me, that would be, it's me. So I came from a codependent way of living to taking full responsibility and ownership. And then I did hit like a dead end there, and I had to let in God and be co-creationing with God and being rightful posturing to him or to her, and be on my knees for this force that is so much bigger than me, and also understand that I don't have to do it alone, but I don't have to hook on to worldly things and people, but I do need to hook on to God. And in that way, he can move through me and through my life, and I can serve as an extension of the kingdom of God without depleting myself or overextending myself. So for me, it's taking full responsibility of my life, but not doing it alone.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were love this. We were having lunch and realized there's a whole topic that we didn't talk about that we want to talk about, which is the comeback in a way of the traditional values between man and woman and in society, and such an interesting part. So yeah, we finished lunch. We're back here. We were talking about this, like there's this whole idea in society, and you also mentioned like there's in a sense there's a battle, or there's what do you call it, like
warfare.
A warfare exactly against this idea of union, by forces and institutions and all kinds of things, and there's a lot of people that are being affected by this, but there's also this other movement happening where people are recognizing, no, it's actually beautiful to come back to these traditional values,
yes,
and to really see that man and woman complement each other. And it's actually, maybe it's not in the highest fulfillment of a woman to get a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 7 or 9 to 9 job, and work the corporate ladder until she's 35, and then realizes she wants to have kids, but she's never focused on that. She's completely out of tune with her body, because she has believed the story of society that's perhaps not true. And the same for men, this idea that it's it's masculinity to conquer as many women as possible, for example, or to go all in on work and on all these like materialistic things when you're talking about accomplishments of money and all this, and then completely neglecting the need to provide, and the power and what a woman can bring, and a devotional relationship, and so curious to hear how you look into how you look at this.
And also, so I love that we're having this topic, and I'm going to bring it back to the polyamorous relationships, where there usually isn't that rightful posturing a relationship, because the man usually isn't providing for 3 women at the same time, protecting 3 women at the same time. And how can he? Because what a woman in the first place needs to be protected of is a man's own shadow. I think that's the biggest threat to a woman. And what a woman, and we just spoke about that over lunch, what a woman truly needs for her to feel truly a woman that seeks union, right? Of course, there's also women that do not seek that, and they just seek to have a good time, to have relationships, to explore, to be in the dating phase, and they're not looking to meet their person, right? I'm not talking about these women. I'm talking about women that are looking to meet their person.
Yeah, so let's be clear. We're not saying that this is the one thing that has to
Applies
work.
to every person in the world right
Exactly.
now. No.
Yeah.
But it's to those who seek union and who seek to procreate and who feel this deep innate calling for a love that is so vast and so deep that you could write romance novels about it and make movies about it because it's so beautiful and so magical and so divine. That type of love. Because I believe when you feel that calling in your heart, you're never going to be satisfied with normal love, with like normal relationships. And I also believe you're not going to be satisfied in a polyamorous relationship where your true biological needs are not being met. And for a woman, that is to feel safety and to surrender back into the arms of the masculine. And she knows that he's going to be there, and she knows he's going to hold her, not just now, but also tomorrow. Like, so she needs to have his unwavering commitment and devotion to her for her to fully relax into, and for her then to blossom into this beautiful feminine woman that just pours out gifts and of femininity for him.
Yeah.
And what we just spoke about over lunch is that I think it's so natural for when a woman loves a man right, she's not doing that from efforting any way whatsoever. She's just being her natural true self, and it costs no effort at all. And the man feels completely nourished and loved and met. And the same way for a man. If you are in your rightful posturing as a man, it doesn't take effort for you, but like the inspiration comes from within you. And when you just let that happen and take that place, your woman's going to be so nourished and served. And it's natural. So both parties are not efforting, but they're loving each other, meeting each other so deeply. Just like you said over lunch, but I want to provide. Can you say again? Like what?
Yeah, there's this very clear like energy or like driving force that I feel in my body and my soul that like I that's part of my meaning and what I'm here to do is to provide, to take care of a woman and of a family, and to build. And like, please let me, you know, pay for the bills. Please let me work my ass off when it's needed. Please let me like build the house, take care of the, you know, all the paperwork or like all the head heavy stuff. So you as a woman can relax and like really sink into your gifts as a woman. So you can take care of me in that other sense that I really need to have in my life as well. So you can take care of my kid or of our kids.
Yeah.
And that's only possible, I believe, when you both acknowledge that you're like we said in the beginning, together you're greater than the sum of the parts, and to acknowledge that you're different, and that actually, yes, of course, it's important for a man to be in touch with his feelings, and it's important for a woman to know what she wants in life. And maybe you can say those are feminine and masculine qualities, but it's really about, can I as a man completely commit and be devoted to this relationship and to my woman so she can fully relax. And that creates, in my experience, and also what I've heard and seen, that creates so much space for the woman to relax, and from that space, like connect to her heart, to her womb, to her feeling, to her body, and really start to blossom and embody who she actually really is.
Yes. And always, when you were just speaking, it just brings tears to my eyes, because it's so beautiful to feel and see a man speak from this rightful posturing, that it's just so natural for you. And there's so many men like you that are operating from this state. And I think it's so good for women to hear that, because especially women who are right now in the dating phase and attracting all these emotionally unavailable men, it's very hard for them to believe that there are men out there who are like, no, I want to commit to one woman only. I want to devote, I want to provide for her, I want to protect for her. So women of the world, listen up, because the men are there. Because there's this big collective conversation happening, right? Of where are all the conscious men? They're actually there, but you have to, again, do the inner work for them to arrive in your frequency field. I believe that's also a representation of what you believe and hold on your internal. But the men are here. Like, I'm speaking to one, and I'm loved by one. It's so beautiful to. So I love hearing you speak.
Thank you. Yeah, I love like you're in a sense the product of your surroundings. People sometimes say you're the average of the 5 people you see the most, but I think it's also the other way around. So like you actually have to take a step first for your surroundings to attune and to change to the difference, to the frequency that you're embodying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we talked about it a bit on lunch as well, like this idea of let's say the trad wife, or like the woman that is actually really happy with not having a 9-to-5 job, and completely can commit to her role of taking care of the house, the kids, the animals. It also opens up space to actually go back to connecting with animals and nature.
Yes.
Instead of living in like, on the 7th floor, maybe 5 meters of balcony, and just being completely disconnected from nature and from God in that sense as well.
From Mother Earth, yeah.
From the earth, exactly.
Yeah.
And that there's so many women that are now experiencing or like remembering that this is what their body or their soul actually wants.
And that's not to say that a woman never wants to work and does not feel inspired, and that she does not have motivation and ambition and drive, and that's wrong. Like, because sometimes people hear these teachings or concepts and they think it's wrong then for a woman to have ambition, and it's not at all.
Or they go back to this idea of, no, it's the patriarchy and it's the man that's trying to control you, and then you're dependent. But it's actually like, from what I feel in my own system, it's not at all of this idea of I want to make you dependable. It's like I want to create space so you can fully be you.
Yeah. And then she has choice.
Yeah.
And the pressure of having to provide and the pressure of finances, for example, is not on her. So she has a baseline of safety and provision. And the man takes more of a leadership role there, and then her nervous system is going to be so nourished. And then this has happened also for me coming into uni. My nervous system healed and like restored even deeper. And I'm like, oh, now I've got all this inspiration to work. I can create all these things, and I attract and quote unquote manifest easily. I don't think it's manifesting. I think it's just opening up to what wants to happen, and I receive basically the clients that come to me. But I have more capacity for it because I'm loved well. But the pressure of having to fend for myself as a woman is no longer there, because my partner was also, when we came into union, he was like, I want to provide. If you want to work, that's fine. If you don't want to work, that's fine. Look, I'm willing to provide and basically whatever. And that's such a relief that, I'm not being put into a box. I'm not being put into, okay, you have to be the housewife and take care of this, that. Like, he's not putting any role onto me. He's giving me total freedom to relax in my femininity and to create from my natural blueprints. And then there's natural joy to make the house more beautiful. I think a woman is also here to bring color and life to anything, right? A man provides the structure of a house and a woman turns it into a home. She brings color and fragrance and nice fabrics, and she makes sure that it feels like a home. But she needs some space in order to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of women today, of course, aren't as blessed, right? To have partners who are providing and I can also feel that likely for some women and maybe men also listening to this can be painful, because it can be a painful realization of like, oof.
And also, let's not forget, let's be honest, in the current economic system, it is
Yeah.
like it's quite a tall order for the majority of men to, you know, even get in touch with that of like, okay, what if I'm the only breadwinner? Is that even possible with my
Yeah.
current income, or with like, you know, the experience that I've had in a certain market or whatever it is? So of course it's also bringing up like what is actually practically possible, and maybe you don't have to make a switch right away and you can grow into this. But it's interesting to me that this is something that I've really seen happening more and more over the last couple of years. And yeah, like you said, like the women can, or like maybe they're the only ones actually, and it's in their way that can bring color and life and emotion and feeling to things. And it's so needed, because also if you look at like in society we've completely lost our way of our connection with the earth, with nature, but also with art, with like all the architecture, everything straight, and like there's no feeling, there's no emotion.
Yeah.
Because we're all in our heads, and we're all like in survival mode, and we're all doing it alone, instead of building these like, well, what I think the US in English it's called the nuclear family, but it's like it's this committed, even holy, I wouldn't say arrangement, what's the word, but like it's union, but then as a bigger sense with kids, with the family, and it's the family that is there no matter what, and that is that where the father and the mother, the man and the woman, together on all the levels can protect the family from the outside world and whatever is happening. And I think that's such a powerful thing, and it's also such an important thing when we look at what environment do we want our kids to grow up in?
Yes.
What do we want them to experience, to feel? Do we want a mother that's, you know, that's present, that's connected to nature, to her feelings, to her emotions, that's creating out of joy and spaciousness, instead of a mother that's stressed and is bringing her kids to, I don't know, like after school care or all these kind of things.
Yeah. Well, she has to take care of the bills and fend for herself. And yeah, I love how you're bringing this, I believe, very important perspective and connection, that the women, because the women are more in tune with the earth. Like if we're in tune, we feel like, it's not that men cannot do that, right? Just as we're not saying that women can't work and be ambitious.
Of course.
But men, or like women, are naturally in tune with the earth. We can hear her heartbeat. We can feel her cries. We can feel her love. So I love that you hold this connection and perspective of, if I provide for my woman, then she's restoring the connection that we as humanity have to the earth, which is long lost and forgotten, and which is so essential, that we restore our relationship with our mother, our collective mother, and that we love her right. So your devotion goes much deeper and reaches much further than just for your own family, which already is the most beautiful gift and offering you can give as a man. But it reaches so much more. And I believe we all, also in the spiritual scene, right, we all envision this world where we live in harmony with nature again, and where we don't take from her and like hurt her the way we do. And I do believe the women need the spaciousness to speak her voice also, and so that the men can rightfully act. You know, the men who are in power positions in today's world, which is mostly still the case, can receive the women's voice, or the voice of the earth, of nature, through the women, actually listen and take rightful action. I know it's a dream and we're not quite there yet. But, you know, we got to start somewhere. And
yeah. But I also believe that like if a movement is already happening, and it's quite small still, and I think for a lot of the world's population, they're completely not aware of it yet. But there's also this tipping point, like with any change in a group of people or in society, it goes really slow for a long time, and then all of a sudden it goes really fast, really quickly.
Yes.
So, we talked about miracles before. Who knows what can happen, right?
Miracles are possible, 100%. If anyone showed that, it was Christ. I believe he walked this earth, and I believe he was just like handing out miracles after miracles, and they just happen. We just have to be open to believe in it. Alice in Wonderland kind of perspective. Yeah. And I think with this, it's so important to say that when we're talking about returning to tradwife movement and like traditional values, I believe we're returning to that, but it's not devolution, it's actually evolution. And the difference is that we're bringing more fluidity to these roles. Right. So we're remembering our original blueprint and what actually works based on our biology, but there's fluidity. Like you said, the man doesn't necessarily in the instant have to fully provide. And maybe there's moments where he doesn't provide.
Yeah.
Because there's also true that a lot of women nowadays make equal or more money than their men, which is a challenging aspect for a lot of men that feel this innate need to provide. And then they have powerful women besides them that easily make 6 and 7 figures, or sometimes even have 8-figure businesses. And it can be very challenging for a man to feel like, oh, but does this woman actually need me? Do I have a place in her life? How can I earn my place in her life?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm totally not saying that it's then it has to be that, how do I say this? That the woman is, let's say, surrendering to the man. It's not about that at all. Like when we're talking about like going back to traditional values, I don't mean the state of relationships in, let's say, the 1800s or like, it's not that. It's more like seeing that we're not the same and we complement each other. And that by doing that and by connecting to what is really our deepest calling in our soul instead of what society expects of us, we can actually sink deeper into ourselves and contribute in a more beautiful and deeper way. Yeah. And of course, there is many women that are extremely capable, and that's their mission, and it's 100% love that. And I think the same for men. Like there's there's this account on Instagram a really long time ago I followed that the guy is called, I think he's in the UK, father of daughters. He's got 4 or 5 daughters, and he's actually the stay-at-home dad.
Oh yeah.
But it's so beautiful as well to see, like, all the stuff. And he also takes care of the house and he builds all these things and he's there for their daughters all the time. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing at all. But it is about realizing what are my natural gifts as a man or as a woman, and how can I build or adjust my life, and how can we together work together to let the magic unfold.
Because we also, I believe, need women in powerful positions in the world. And we need women in politics, for example, and we need women in governmental organizations, and we need women on the leading edge. We need women also there with the change makers. So not to say that women cannot be there at all, but indeed from what posturing and like what is natural to them, and can their partner be besides them and support them and still make them feel provided for and loved for and cared for, also from his natural posturing. And I think it's for every union couple that comes together to figure out, how do you two come together? Like, what does your union look like? What does it look like for the two of you? And your journey is so unique. What does provision look like? What does protection look like? How do you naturally give and receive love? And there's no one template that fits every couple, but there's some guidelines that were just naturally fit most. But the details of it will look different for every couple.
Yeah. You mentioned before, like, as women, we are attuned to the earth. Can you take me there? Like, what does that feel like?
What does that feel like? What a beautiful question. It's like if we tune in, and if women tune into their womb, women who tend to do womb work tend to be connected to the earth as well. When I tune into my womb and I take a posturing of descent, so much teaching is there about ascension, right? But I believe it's not, especially now for us women, it's not about ascending anywhere. It's actually about descending deeper into our bodies to fully embody all of us, of our physical body, our auric body, our energetic body, and then to descend into the earth. So it's like I can feel her. I can feel her love. I can feel her heart. I can feel her strength and her power. And I can also feel that she's a conscious being who's aware of what we do to her. Like, this is a different conversation, but actually maybe it's not. So I'm also interested in investing, for example. So now with a few friends and my love, we're like in this investors club, basically, where people discuss about what are the ways of investing. And the things that are being offered, my body just naturally closes down for certain options. Like you can invest in gold, you can invest in gold mines. But for me, the idea of investing in a mine that's literally mining the earth, like hurting her, my body just closes and just feels like, no, I'm not investing in that. Because I don't want us to dig into her and to treat her as a resource that we can just take from without giving back.
Only extract.
Extracting, exactly. Yeah. And that's when I feel we have such an extractive relationship to our mother. And that hurts me. And I'm like, no, I'm not putting my money there. So yeah, it definitely transforms the way I live and make a lot of decisions. Like, am I hurting her or not? This is also why I have been vegan for 7 years. I'm not anymore. But my retreats, for example, will still be vegan because I do believe a vegan lifestyle for the earth is most likely better and less invasive. I believe we're by nature, eating fruits is one of the healthiest things we can do. It's the least invasive to the earth. And it's like nature has provided various food resources, but there's literally trees that grow juicy fruits that fall off the tree. It's like, it makes so much sense for us to eat that. And it doesn't require the farming that we need to get a piece of meat or some nice cheese. So yeah, it's like with decisions I make, I feel the impact on her.
Love that.
And when I go into nature, it's like you feel, yeah, I was in a beautiful piece of nature yesterday, the Henschotermeer, and then you can just feel the pristine stillness and power of such a place. You can feel a history of a place. You can feel whether a piece of earth feels well taken care of. That part of the earth actually feels very well taken care of. But there's also places where you just feel that she's suffering a bit more. Not that it's nothing that she can't handle. I believe she's much stronger than us, than what we can do to her. But it doesn't mean that she's not feeling the impacts or maybe even pain of what we're doing. How we're dumping pharmaceuticals into the earth and digging into her and fighting and shedding blood, where it's just, in my heart of hearts, not necessary to do that.
Yeah, I fully agree. And it's so, I'm only realizing, well, like parts of this are only starting like clicking now. Like this, like I always, when I need to recharge, I go into nature. Preferably barefoot.
Yes.
To really connect with the earth. And it always feels like I'm like physically and energetically like recharging.
Yeah.
And I feel nurtured.
Yeah.
There's last year I was on this trip 5 days into Norway, a trip called The Hero's Journey. Made a documentary about it as well.
Cool.
So if you're interested, watch it on my website. But it's this, we were 5 days completely off grid, offline, on this journey into nature, but also into ourselves. And we did 2 days of walking. We stayed in one place for about 1.5 days, about 20 hours solo in nature, like a mini vision quest. So like afternoon, night, and morning, completely by yourself. And then 2 days walking back. And the last night in nature, we were in this small valley that was, we were so attuned to the rhythm of nature. No one knew what time it was. We were all out of our heads, completely present. I think for the last 2 days, I was never lost in thought. Of course, I had thoughts, but only the ones that were kind of needed in the moment. And I was so present. And then we found this magical valley with a lot of moss and beautiful vegetation, and it was a bit lower and like was quite small, and it felt like this, like a hand of the mother.
Wow.
That was carrying us and nurturing us. And one of the women of the group decided, I don't want to sleep in the tent, I want to sleep outside. So me and one other person joined her, and we just put our mats on the floor, and we were just in nature, and it was so magical. It was like, it's really has been an anchor to do that more often, to go into nature more often, to really realize like I'm also being carried in lots of ways by the earth, by her. And it's really just for me, the earth is also it's feminine energy. You feel it. And it's really amazing for a man as well to be able to relax into that as well. To not have to carry for every once in a while.
That's so beautiful. I'm so feeling that place that you're describing. I'm like, take me there. I want to rest there. And I love that you're doing that and that you slept there. I think that's also such a good way of reconnecting with our mother. And because aren't we all like so disconnected? The fact that we have to think about, oh, can I sleep out in nature? Like how many of us actually do that? I've also felt this call many times, and I've actually not done it, I think, to fully sleep bare out in the open, because there always was a reason and somebody had a good argument for being in the tent or being in a house. But my intuition, my bodily intuition has always been, no, I want to be on her. And maybe the only reason I wouldn't do it is mosquitoes. That's a part of nature.
This was Norway in the fall. It's like mosquitoes everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And somehow that night,
oh wow,
they were still like, when you're at the fire, they don't come close because of the heat. But then normally when I would go back to the tent, they would be everywhere. That night, I just slept in my sleeping bag on the mat in the open air. Not a single mosquito. And then only when the sun rose, I heard and saw the first one again.
Oh wow.
So it was really special.
I love that.
Yeah. Some things I can't explain it, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
Just enjoy that moment of magic.
That's just a quote in itself. Some things I can't explain it, and I don't have to. That just testifies magic.
I love that. I think it's a beautiful ending. Can you please share like things that are coming up for you? What you're working on right now and in the near future, and also where people can find you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So for singles and couples who want to be or come into deeper union, I'm hosting a mastermind called Devoted to Love, which is a 6-month mastermind journey with bi-weekly online sessions, group sessions, where we will also separate the men and the women, for the women to go deeper with me and the men to go deeper with my partner. There will be a Telegram community, so there's a lot of space for like personal growth and transformation, and this is preparing the road to union. So that's one way. I also do one-on-one mentorship, which are 3 6 month or 1 year journeys where I will guide you one-on-one very deeply. It's like a high intensive to transform any area of your life, love, or business very deeply. And then there's a possibility to join the healing community of self-healers with essential oils. And I think the best way is to just reach out to me on Instagram, or find me on my website, which is maikenista.com, or join a retreat. We haven't even spoken about that yet.
Yeah, well, let's dive into it. Because you're based in Amsterdam and Ibiza,
Yes.
I think, but the retreat is Ibiza or Bali?
Yeah, Ibiza.
Ibiza,
Yeah,
okay.
most of them have been in Bali in the beginning, but then I didn't want to travel so much, and now we're doing them in Ibiza. And I'm not excluding the idea that I'll be doing some in the Netherlands as well in the future. But the retreat is called the Inner Beauty Retreat, as I found beauty truly comes from within. It's that spark, that energy that someone has that makes them beautiful. So when you're in unity and harmony with yourself, and I believe with something divine, those people are the most beautiful.
There's a radiance that's what people have.
Yeah, and it comes from within. And it's not in any cream or Botox or what people get nowadays to look beautiful. It's so much deeper. And it's not about the beauty, but it's about really what's inside. We can create so much beauty from within and thereby be extensions of God and be extensions of love and be forces of love and goodness in the world. And I believe we all have a role to play in that, however big or however small that is for someone. So these retreats are very deeply transformational journeys. People do not leave the same. For many people, actually everybody has said on their intake forms, and we've had about 450 people, I think, who've gone through retreats, and everybody has said on their feedback forms, it's been life-changing. Everybody, so we have 100% life-changing rate and 100% would recommend to friends and family rate. And people found miracles. We also suggest that everybody will receive a miracle. That's something we do in the last couple of retreats because we've really seen that. And also when you state that, you will receive a miracle this week. And here's what a miracle could look like. It actually happens. And something miraculous happens, like a big shift takes place in someone or an otherworldly experience or that just changes your perspective on life and the world. And people find their purpose. So many people who have changed homes, jobs, finally start their business, came into union, finally were able to break free from that toxic relationship that wasn't serving them. People who couldn't get pregnant for years and tried. And then after a particular session, like a breathwork or a healing session in that retreat, where they finally came eye to eye with the block of pregnancy, healed and resolved that, and then they were pregnant. Physical issues that were healed, like true magic happens. And I really believe it's not us doing that. I believe it's God doing that and our bodies doing that. Again, if the right conditions are provided. So we just provide the right conditions for healing and transformation and revelation. And that's what happens in these retreats.
Love it. Beautiful. Thank you, Mike. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your experience and your wisdom. And all the links will be definitely in the show notes as well for people to dive into, your work and connect with you if they want to. And that's it. See you on the next time.
Thank you so much for having me and for doing this work. Like, it's really beautiful, the vision that you have for this podcast and what you're creating. So I'm also really curious to listen to other episodes that you've recorded. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Listening to the
Likewise.
Spirit Unfolding podcast. I'm so grateful that you've joined us in this episode, and I hope that you've gained valuable insights and inspiration that you can apply to your own life. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with your family, friends, and on social media. And subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts so we can reach more people and bring on bigger guests.